I'll fly, and I'll fly into the end of the sky. So I'll be the one who doesn't have to say goodbye.
I think I saw a reaction on this Halloween 2022 called Return to Bittersweet Apple Acres, MLP Fanfic Reading, Part 3, Grimdark. It is 18 minutes and 51 seconds long. Oh, yes. Okay, Part 3. We had a anonymous Jane Doe, that's not her name by the way, who was tortured. Her tongue being taken out or cut out. That's actually painful. That reminds me, it's one of those it's torture, but at the same time you can live in a sense. It'd be a miserable life, but yeah. The pony was basically like Jesus being to the wars. Or was it on the cross? I don't know. And the sparrow voice guy, I forgot the fucking pony's name. He was basically killed by, I don't know, was it like ropes or something? Like it sounded like it imploded on himself or something, cut through his body and made it into meats, pony meat.
No, he was shredded to death.
Lovely, absolutely lovely. So, anyone for food? Anyone? No. But according to the narrator, not narrator, narrator, more deaths are in store. Let's find out if there's any more. Let's get the reaction started in 3, in 2, in 1, go! Okay, not the 10 for younger viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Kofla. I just said that. We got like an old film effect.
I have never forgotten Trevor's face since that day.
Oh yeah, he was killed.
The tone of his voice when he spoke his last words.
Oh.
He should have never died the way he did. And thanks to my stubbornness and idiotic hope for an impossible cause, he did.
Fade in the text.
And is now trapped for eternity in that place.
His soul is in there. His soul is trapped in the apple.
And I've cried in every instance that haunting last image of him crossed my mind. It completely broke my mind after I just ran away from that horrible sight.
And the other pony as well?
Little Flora Bloom for the rest of her life. I'd never witnessed death so graphically in my life up to that point.
But Sparrow has in the game, in the reactions, in the videos.
It affected my mentality like a virus. I didn't even remember running for those next 10 minutes. All I remember is crying and just not stopping until my stamina gave way from exhaustion. My face had probably looked as if I cried ink or tar, along with my fur being drenched.
You'd be a sense that you're going to be. You're going to get a point that you can't cry anymore because you are so exhausted from crying.
And broken, like a failure or cult lost in a big city without their parents. Wishing I had never even become curious about the Sweet Apple Massacre. And praying for Princess Flare to hear me beyond that realm. To come and save us.
You need to see a psychiatrist. Speak to Colstein. He will help you.
We'd found out of our own stupidities. But nothing ever came. And all that I could
But you might need to speak to the happy and the sad trees though.
And that's what I did. I ran almost non-stop through that endless labyrinth. Even if my hooves objected.
Is it actually amazing in the barn, or is it
dead set on finishing
or is it just
like a raging bull? Like I knew I couldn't stop.
How big is the actual barn in a sense?
Just trotted and trotted up until I heard a scream.
It's the Trotting Dead.
Sarah's scream.
Cue Sparrow. That's a scream.
A distant, shrill scream broke the ambient sound
No,
of the creaking
really?
pipes, bringing Flora to a skidding stop. She'd been running for an unsure amount of time, her focus having
inside
been
the
more
barn.
focused on just putting as much distance between the headless witch pursuing her and her friends and her. She knew that scream well, having heard it a plentiful amount of times throughout her teen years as a result of a successful scary prank.
Oh, yeah.
It came from the mare whom she knew was easily scared, despite her appearance, attitude, and role as a medium.
She's a medium? Hello.
Her emotions started to build up again, Trevor's demise flashing before her eyes like a rapid succession of a strobe light again.
Why is she going there knowing it's going to be full of evil and she's a medium?
She wouldn't. Wiping her tears away, she listened closely, hoping for Sarah to scream again. Not even a second later, another shrill and desperate scream pierced the air.
She'd been
Flora
tortured.
honed in on where it was coming from.
From up
She
above.
was great at determining directions of sounds, having been in the Philly Scouts before and knowing how to determine where things like cries of help came from in settings like forests. The pipes were a little deceiving, but she could tell for sure that the sound was coming from above her.
I just said that!
She hustled to find a way to ascend from her current area to an upper floor. The pipes were big enough to climb on, so she could use them as a ladder to move upwards to another floor.
Can you impact
However,
now?
one thing she didn't know was the state of the pipes. Were they rusted and fragile, or sturdy and solid? She wasn't sure if it was her ambition leading her to a potentially dangerous action, but she didn't care.
No.
A friend was in danger, and she wasn't going to let these monsters take another victim. She eventually found a wall with pipes that lined it like a ladder, and upon looking upward, she found a small opening just big enough for her to fit through. The condition of the pipes wasn't good, rusted patches being visible along the entirety of their length, but Flora didn't care.
No,
She found a non-rusted spot that seemed sturdy enough for her to climb on and not fall through, and started her ascent to the next upper level.
You could try.
Upon contact with the pipes, Flora was surprised to find them as sturdy as a newly formed block of concrete, not even seeming fragile or in a decrepit condition.
That's
strange. With that assurance, she continued upward, sliding through the small opening with ease and up into a very claustrophobic space that continued for at least another 20 feet.
So you're climbing into
Flora
the
wasn't
attic?
worried about fatigue, being fit enough to outlast heavy amounts of climbing, despite her being a Pegasus. Sure, flying up would have been easier, but the amount of space made flapping her wings impossible. Something she thought was intentional to keep the chase fun. After the full climb of 20 feet, the area opened to the left to a thin linear path that had a small rectangular opening to the right of it.
No.
Flora nearly jumped upon the sound of another scream mixed with the very evident sound of a hammer pounding against
her. Yeah, she's been tortured. She's been tortured.
Opening. The scream was muffled this time, meaning her tormentor had finally decided.
I thought the whole place would be shrouded in darkness.
Now she was in the danger zone and would have to step lightly. The
danger zone.
Another set of screams and hammer pounding set off, to which Flora used as a cover for her to move toward the opening to the room where Sarah was. The sounds horrified.
It sounds like she can't walk, though.
Upon meeting the opening, she realized why Sarah's screams had been so shrill.
Why?
Just like the Jane Doe pony, Sarah's hooves were in the process of being nailed. But instead of a wall, Sarah was seated in a wooden chair with her limbs and throat bound by barbed wire.
Ooh,
Some sort of strange device positioned around her head
those sort of things can hurt.
Her back legs had already been nailed to the chair, and currently her left hoof was being pounded into with a nail by a much larger and muscular pony. They had an orange mane and blood-red body, their cutie mark being the cross-section of a green apple. Flora could only guess that this was the
Granny Smith
mayor's brother, Big Macintosh.
Oh, right.
The main pony who operated the grinder while the massacre was still going on. Apparently, he was a torturer as well, and judging from the current situation,
Big Mac!
He wasn't any less brutal as his...
Really? Have a burger!
Celestia above. How can any pony do this?
Flora knew she couldn't fight or even pose a threat to this giant, so she started to look around for anything she could use as a distraction.
A stone?
Luckily, she found a small piece of wood just outside the opening
okay.
that she could reach, grabbing it with care and as much silence as she could muster. With the wood gripped, she quickly surveyed the room, looking around for somewhere to toss the wood far enough to get him to leave the room. After one scout of the relatively small room, she quickly found an open doorway that was open enough for her to get a clear throw.
Throw it then.
With careful aim, she counted down in her head and prepped the throw.
1, 2, 3, 2, 1.
The wood went flying to the doorway and through, landing with a clank in the distance. The large and buff stallion seized his torture and perked his ears at the sound, setting aside his hammer and moving out of the room to investigate the noise.
What's that noise?
Once the coast was clear, Flora moved hastily out of her hiding place and into the room. Sarah jumped at the sight of her friend's intrusion, breathing and sweating heavily from the unholy amount of excruciating pain she had endured.
You'd be losing a lot of blood doing that, wouldn't you?
Too much, not wanting the barbed wire to catch her neck, but she did mutter through her covered mouth at the sudden ray of hope she'd been given.
Sarah, it's okay. I'm going to get you out of here.
Good luck.
Flora assured, looking around for something to cut the barbed wire with. Off to the side, Flora caught sight of the arsenal of torture tools that Big Macintosh had or was yet to use. The only bloodied up tool was the hammer, meaning Sarah's torture hadn't gotten too far to where serious injury could have been applied.
Oh, right.
She was relieved
Superficial wounds,
but saw no wire cutters on the tray of tools, causing her to panic a little, starting to look along the floor and around the chair Sarah was seated in.
Those wires could be very tough,
found
actually.
Something that somewhat calmed her nerves, finding that the barbed wire had been nailed to the chair. With that assurance, she quickly walked back to the chair, grabbing the hammer and starting to dislodge the nails from the barbed wire like a mad pony. She knew time was not on her side.
Applejack is a mad pony.
Managing to pull out the nails rather easily, the wood of the chair being not the healthiest.
Are you going to use your teeth again to
With that done,
nails
and
out?
The threat of the barbed wire causing additional damage extinguished, she moved to the next grueling step of dislodging the nails from Sarah's hooves.
Oh, it's painful, that.
Okay, Sarah.
I'm going to get you out.
I'm going to need you to just breathe and count to 5.
1, 2,
she said while placing
4,
the opposite
5.
forked end of the hammer to where she could grip the nail head. Sarah's eyes changed to where she started to cry and object through the cloth, but Flora just ignored her friend's pleas and continued.
Go on, you can do it. You can do it.
Ready?
Yes.
1,
2,
3.
She pulled the hammer back as far as she could, the nail starting to slither out and the wound starting to pulse blood out. Sarah protested loudly through the cloth.
Apply dressing on it! Apply dressing! You're gonna bleed to death!
Fire. It took 5 long, agonizing seconds, but the nail finally released its embrace with Sarah's body, the nail soaked in crimson upon its collapse to the wooden floor.
Oh.
Her hoof bled severely as Flora moved to the next one, gripping the nail head.
Apply pressure on the wound!
Again. Sarah wanted to object with her free hoof, but knew if she wanted to get out and live, she needed to let Flora do this.
Yes.
5 more agonizing seconds. Another nail free and temporary bleeding. Sarah had her front hooves back and free to use at her leisure, but there were still 2 to go.
2 more nails?
No rest,
oh god.
Moving to the floor and starting her removal of the other 2 nails. 10 more seconds of her back legs burning like fire and nerves dancing as if she'd been tased later.
It's just, I can just imagine the pain. I can just imagine the pain of that.
Whatever held her head in place. Sarah manually attempted to free her head from the grip of the two rectangular metal slabs tightly holding both sides of her head in place, but it was as if she were part of the slabs.
Slabs?
Flora moved to the back of the chair, examining the device that held her friend tightly for any sort of way to release its hold, finding absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all.
Then she saw it.
What you saw?
The stallion had returned, standing still in the doorway on the opposite side of the room with a blank expression. Only until now had Flora seen the gaping wound across the perimeter of his throat, remembering that he and the entire family after Applejack's demise had committed suicide as a way of solidifying their refusal to justice.
Oh dear.
Nope.
Nope.
He said calmly,
That's Thomas,
following him lifting his back leg and kicking something. Upon the sudden sound of an electric current and the eruption of a machine, both of their hearts plummeted. It only grew more horrifying upon the discovery of the machine, now in full function, being whatever Sarah's head was currently bound to.
It's a grinder, isn't it?
Then it hit Flora. The machine was a vice. Upon connecting the dots, Flora panicked and began to scramble for a way to stop the machine from functioning any further. The situation grew all the more desperate and grim upon Big Mac following up his activation of the device through the switch of a lever with violent kicks up until the lever snapped like a twig.
I'm just imagining or splattered blood now.
On a hasty trot, leaving Flora to a hopeless situation as Sarah began to scream from the assured and absolute gruesome end to her life. Flora had no idea what to do, pounding the machine with a hammer as hard as possible.
I think you're fighting a lost cause
along
here.
with rushing over to where the switch once had been and trying with all of her strength to pull it back to its off position. Sarah's hooves flung wildly, and her screams wailed in absolute terror and desperation for some miracle to save her. The pressure of the vice growing to the point of where her head felt like it was going to implode on itself.
It's gonna... Oh.
And that's exactly what was going to happen if Flora didn't find a way to stop the horror from continuing, or for the impossible possibility of the machine to malfunction and die to occur. Hope didn't exist there. And upon the sickening sound of Sarah's skull being crushed growing audible, Sarah's screams turned to chokes. Her eyes popped out like a mole from its hole in whack-a-mole.
She's been crushed to death.
The sound of blood leaking from wounds filled the room. Sarah's complete upper head was crushed to nothing but mush and a bloody pulp.
Oh
and
my!
The horrid sight of her friend's
disgusting!
Grim and undeserved end, Flora lost her stomach yet again. Sarah's body went as limp as a freshly cooked noodle, and her soul joined the many others doomed to eternal torture there, to which Flora just wept and screamed out. She cried and pounded the floor in anger and guilt. She had failed another one of her best friends, and now their souls were forever bound to that place. She would never forgive herself, and she knew it.
Yeah.
She had thought Trevor was as bad as it could get, but she had been mistaken and had been made full aware that the horrors of Bittersweet Apple Acres have no bounds. After a long time, she finally got back up and walked over to Sarah's corpse. Still crying. Still regretting learning about.
I don't know how do you actually get
about anything to do with this fucking.
I think it's gonna be like a sort of thing that
still sniffling.
She's gonna kill, or she's gonna
hug and goodbye.
She's gonna kill Applejack at the end of the story.
Care about the guts or blood. This corpse was still Sarah, and
when the story's finished,
if she'd just leave one of her first ever friends.
Well, I don't think Applejack's gonna get killed,
dead or alive.
I'm sorry.
So sorry.
Releasing the hug at long last, Flora turned and ran off, her mind spiraling like a nest of angry hornets.
Maybe it was Applejack's plan that she was able to do this without getting spotted.
She'd always
thought not spotted, but it was Applejack's plan.
And now she knew
to make
this.
Applejack is making her witness.
This was hell.
Yes.
No pony could save you, and she couldn't save any pony.
No.
No pony, except herself.
That Applejack knew that she's gonna trying to rescue her friends, and it's like Applejack is like you're gonna witness your friends die. To be continued. Okay, that was Halloween 2022, Return to Bittersweet Upper Acres, MLP Fanfic Reading, Part 3, GRIMDARK. Okay, another gruesome murder by Applejack, co-conspirators of Big Mac. He needs to chill and go to McDonald's.
Seriously?
Sorry, Apple Bloom. I really am sorry. Oh, I forgot you're dead. Sorry. Okay, this is one of the shortest chapters. Start with one of the shortest chapters. I think the next chapter after this is shorter as well. Basically her body or skull was crushed by a device. I was going to say the Pegasus device, but that's completely different fan fiction. That's completely different fan fiction. She made a good effort of taking out the nails, taking out the barbed wire, because even those things are tough. They seem to last a long time, barbed wire. A long time, especially the hard. It's like hard steel, and she managed to get most of. I don't think the other pony or the medium was. I don't think she was strong enough, even when she was released. I don't think she was strong enough to basically to move. Maybe she was tied, because I'm trying to picture the actual device. Was she trapped on? Was it like? I just imagine like a conveyor belt sort of thing. And that is actually, or was she lying down on the? Because I'm trying to imagine she was in a room, she's on a chair, but also got the device. I'm thinking, what's her orientation to? Is she actually sitting in a chair, and as it's getting crushed? I'm trying to. It's very hard to picture that sometimes. I'm trying to work out. She was on the chair. She got free, but she was trapped in the actual device. Is it like I was like a grinder, or was it basically like a pressure sort of a thing? Crush the skull. It reminds me of the Starlight one. Is it Are You Friends or Not? I'm not sure. Or I'm thinking about Lyra's song. Oh God, don't get me started on that reaction. Without reading. Bloody hell. Dear. I nearly fit to the table. Like it didn't. I wouldn't have a PC. But anyway, yeah. It's one of those gruesome murders that no pony can escape from. And we need to stop this hell. We need to stop Applejack. I don't know. Is she a ghost? If she's a ghost, how would you stop a demonic P word? Is she even a P word? I'm not going to say the word because I'm not going to make a fucking outtake out of it. But we will find out, because there's 2 more parts. So you've got part. There's part 4. There's part 4. There's part 5, and it's not going to get better. It's not going to get better. So until the next reaction. Hopefully, like this reaction, the more reaction videos I do, and I'll see you next time. Oh, yes.
And I'll fly